Hello Exile! Oh boy, the news is hot off of the press. 0.20 is looking oh so delicious, especially for build diversity, so I decided to quickly put this video together to highlight all of the key points from the dev stream. There is a lot to unpack. The stream was around 3 hours after all, but I will try my best to summarize all of the important points for you. If you want to dive into further detail, I will leave a link to the content reveal video in the description. Without further ado, let us begin. Let's start off with probably one of the biggest highlights in the whole reveal, the Huntress. If I had to compare it to another class, it would be a monk, but so much more agile. And if I dare say, way more interactive in terms of playstyle. With the Huntress comes the addition of two new weapon types, the spear and the buckler. Using the spear enables you to switch between melee and ranged skills, and the buckler allows you to parry attacks, which cause mobs to take extra damage from follow-up attacks as well as whole new interactions from other skills. Kind of curious to see how that will play out in new builds during the update though. Now we don't know exactly what new skills or support gems are coming out until the patch notes next week, but it looks like the Huntress lays a very good foundation for a bleed based build, as well as elemental builds due to the Amazon ascendancy. Even allowing you to tame beasts to become companions, which I think is really cool. The Huntress comes with two new ascendancies, Ritualist and Amazon. Ritualist brings a new twist on things, allowing you to equip an extra ring, increases the bonuses from rings and amulets, and sacrificing enemies to gain a budget headhunter buff. I will be damned if ingenuity survives the nerfs with these passives. Amazon seems a bit more focused on elemental base damage and an attack based playstyle, with nodes like elemental infusion, critical strike chance, and allowing elemental damage to leech life alongside physical damage. Alrighty, so with the Huntress coming soon to PoE 2, there are also 3 brand new ascendancies for some of the already existing classes in the game. First one is the Smith of Kitava ascendancy for the warrior. I've never really been a warrior player, but this new ascendancy just might change my idea on that. Why I think this one is so cool is purely for the fact that you can literally smith your own armor and customize it as you wish with your ascendancy points. Mercenary also gets the Tactician, which has some interesting notables which support Pin and supporting fire. And finally, we have the brand new Witch ascendancy, the Lich. As you guessed it, Witch will finally have an ascendancy that is specifically catered for Necromancer builds. Infernalist was pretty decent for this, but Lich just makes it oh so smooth. Things like applying additional curses, socketing a non-unique basic jewel to juice the ever-living out of it, granting unholy might to allies, and more. These are pretty solid choices to add in as new ascendancies. Obviously in future updates to come there will be more added, but I would really like to see a new sorcerer ascendancy other than Stormweaver or Chronomancer. Oh yes, this is another thing that makes my toes curl like Rumpelstiltskin from Shrek. They are finally bringing in Spectres. Throughout my PoE career, I've always been a fan of 2 types of builds, dot builds and minions. On the minion side, Spectres had my heart, and I'm so happy they are bringing them into the game this early. The mobs in PoE 2 compared to PoE 1 allow us to use some pretty disgusting Spectre combos. Similarly to PoE 1, Spectres we summon in PoE 2 will cost Spirit. The stronger the beastie, the more Spirit it costs. Just knowing that they are bringing in Spectres makes me torn between starting the new league with a Huntress or a Spectre build, but I guess the patch notes will decide. Before we move on, let's talk about the Rower. This allows you to summon a Rower, which you can ride around. By the looks of things, it doesn't increase your movement speed and only uses your base movement speed, but you can also use ranged attacks on it, but not melee. It's not immortal though, and you can be knocked off if your stagger bar gets too high. Later on in the stream during the Q&A, they did express a concern that the Rower may end up becoming too much of a speed boost. Not in the movement speed sense, but because it cancels out the ranged attack animation, thereby making things feel a lot smoother. So I guess it's technically faster. In total, they are looking to release 25 new skills, probably more geared towards spears and bucklers, 100 new support gems, and over 100 uniques are being added. We don't have the full list, and I don't think this will all be included in the patch notes next week. The team did say that they want us to explore and experiment, which I fully agree on. Take the coming Calamity armor, for example. It looks rather delectable. 3 heralds without costing a single schmeckle of spirit. But I'm confident they're going to nerf heralds into the ground in the next patch, so it may or may not be as OP as we think it is, but one can still dream. Now for the upcoming Asmeri Wisp mechanic. For those of you who have played PoE 1, this one might look a little familiar. I'm looking at you, Tormented Spirits. I do like this mechanic better though. Instead of just beelining to one monster to possess, the Asmeri Wisp will pass through a bunch of monsters, which makes the final monster much stronger and thus have more rewards. There's a bunch of wisps all with their own unique interactions, and with these wisps come a new item called talismans, which can be socketed on specific items. I'm sure there are more than just these three, but oh yeah, it's all coming together. The Asmeri Wisps also receive their own set of Atlas passives, as well as being influenced by tablets. The endgame, the one part of PoE 2 that we all know needs some serious love. The team knows this too, and to be fair, it is still very early days with more and more in-game content to be added in the coming updates. We're still a long way away from PoE 2's official launch, but just with this update alone, they have made leaps and bounds. They have two main goals. The one is to increase the amount of content you can encounter in the endgame and to smooth map progression. They are bringing in 8 new maps, all with their own custom encounters and interactions. I'm not going to dive into what each map does, but with these new maps comes new item base types. We now also have 10 extra Atlas passives to earn, which we can get by completing these unique maps. And I think we can all agree that Essence needed some love. Some people who spec'd into Essence farming farmed for ages not to get any greater Essences at all. They now have an Essence-based unique map where you can have higher chances to find greater Essences. We can now also corrupt Essences, finally, which at least opens up some more crafting options for us as players. And we now see the return of Rogue Exiles. However, they are a little stronger than PoE 1's variants, which already can be pretty rippy sometimes. Now they can come equipped with uniques that they are affected by and of course will drop. Unique strongboxes. Strongboxes are already pretty meh, so I guess we will see how these play out. I do hope to see a potential strongbox rework though in the future. Something more tangible, I guess, is the changes to the Atlas itself. The way we unlock our Atlas passives will change over to clearing specific maps instead of the unnecessarily grindy clear 10 maps of each tier. Instead, we will find corrupted Nexus maps around the Atlas. Around these will of course be a large area of corruption which corrupts the surrounding maps. And there are now new modifiers to be found on these map types which can be quite rewarding by the looks of it. Clearing a corrupted Nexus will cause the surrounding maps to become cleansed maps. A new area type with its own unique set of modifiers as well as new monsters. In these cleansed maps we can find fracturing orbs, which will help greatly with endgame crafting opportunities. These seem very similar to synthesized gear in PoE 1, but what it essentially does is ensure that whatever affix is rolled using the fracturing orb, that affix will remain on the item regardless of what you do to it. I'm sure you can see the potential here. Next up on the buzz list is of course the tower rework. I think we can all agree that currently setting up a bunch of towers to properly juice your maps can take freaking ages, and it feels like a chore. They are reworking towers by reducing the number of towers you encounter. Strange, I know, but bear with me. Tablets will now feature twice as much content as before, so instead of 10 breach maps we can now get up to 28 and possibly more. Each tower can now slot up to 3 tablets instead of 1, which is going to make juicing much better and much quicker, instead of running to 5 separate towers. You unlock these new slots by completing the towers with more modifiers on the waystones, so it gives us an excuse to actually do the towers as if it were a normal map instead of just running white waystones. This makes even more sense considering towers can now spawn with mechanics. I just hope the radius of the new tablets are substantial enough to be worth it though. This brings us onto something that I, and I know pretty much everyone in the community, feel that needed to be changed. The one portal in maps is finally being reworked. PoE 2 is already a lot more difficult and methodical by design, and the design choice of just having one life in the end game just didn't make any sense. They are swapping it to the traditional 6 attempts per map, but with a twist. The more modifiers you add, the less attempts you have. This makes way more sense to me, as it still encourages us to be careful and not die, but not be so heavily penalized for deaths that aren't necessarily our fault. Especially when you just get to the endgame. Apparently in parties, all players get to respawn a set amount of times. Not too sure how this would work out, but when the patch notes come out, we will have some more clarity. And yeah, finally brought recombinators into the game. Currently, the crafting system is pretty much a slot machine pool, and at least recombination will at least allow us to do something a tad more deterministic. In short, we can combine two items, hoping to get the best modifiers of the two on the new item that you recombined. Now we finally have another use for the expedition currency that we gather throughout our maps. Finally, the Q&A session. As most of the live stream was the Q&A, I won't go through the whole entire thing, but there were a few key points that stood out to me that I felt were worth mentioning. Because there was a lot discussed during the chat, we will go through these in a fairly rapid fire fashion. Otherwise, we will be here for way longer than we need to be. During the session, they spoke about the endgame a lot, which is of course the main topic on everyone's lips. The endgame at the moment feels dull, because in essence, PoE 2 hasn't had time to properly cook like PoE 1 has in terms of endgame content. But you knew that already, you cheeky noodle. Their main priority in future updates to come is to add in more content to the endgame to give us the same, if not as close to the experience of PoE 1 as possible, where there is so much to do that you can't possibly do it all. There's a lot of content to include, so given some time, things will get real good. The key thing here is not being repetitive. The moment content becomes too repetitive, it runs the risk of becoming boring. PoE 2 will need more variations in content to feel like there's a lot more randomness and variety to boost our endgame experience, which is covered quite well in the Q&A. On that note, things like pinnacle bosses, which are getting reworked to have a better barrier to entry, have half health at level 0. Which is the first boss encounter you fight, and throughout the board no longer penalize you with experience loss on death. Sustaining maps is easier due to waystones being more common and will no longer drop below the level of your current map. Nothing like running tier 15s to only drop a bunch of tier 3s, eh? No more shall this be a thing though, which I am so excited for. They also mentioned that they are looking into the idea of maps potentially dropping at least magic instead of normal, but they haven't decided on that just yet. And we better hold on to something tight, because they did say that the patch notes next week will look like one hell of a nerf fest. Hear me out though, it is a good thing. Currently the meta is so focused on a handful of builds that there's not enough space for build diversity because these builds are so freaking strong. This is also partly due to the lack of skill gems and relevant support gems, which are all being added in the update. So what is good now will certainly get bricked. Heralds for one will get nerfed because they no longer self-propagate. Attribute stacking builds are definitely getting nerfed. And that's it for some of the points that they covered. I tried my best to summarize everything, but if you can get your hands on the Q&A session, I would highly recommend watching it if you'd like to dive even deeper. Otherwise, there will be many more videos to come leading up to and after Dawn of the Hunt, so if there's anything you'd like me to cover ahead of time, drop it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay sane. Exile.